Believe it or not, today I'm actually going to do a queue. We did linked lists and we did arrays. This time we're going to do the data structure, which is a queue. Now, notice how it's structured almost like an array, right? Because it's built off of the idea of an array, but it's not quite exactly the same. Because an array, you can remove and add indexes anywhere in the array, right? However, a queue actually adds to the end of the length of the current array. But it also takes whatever the first item in, that's going to be the first item that comes out. So it follows the concept of FIFO. So first in, first out. This essentially means that if we have a character here, for instance, if you're doing game development, and you wanted to have a line of enemies, you could say this is character A, this is character B, and this is character C, right? Now, A would go out first, of course, because A is the first A is the first item that entered the queue, right? So A would go first. That is not the right arrow. So A would come out first, then we would shift down, and B would take A's place. So A is here, right? Go ahead and erase A, erase B, and erase C. And now we shift down all the items in the array. Now we have B here, and we have C. Then if we wanted to take the next item, so first in, first out, remember, the first item what is the first item in the queue? Well, the first item is B. So now that we took A off, we can go use a method called pop, which essentially takes the first item out of the queue. It also applies to stacks, but stacks are completely different. I'll make a video on stacks after this video later. So we take A, because we just took that out of the array, then we take B out, or B out of the queue. And we shift down all the indexes. So now C is the last item in the queue, and B is now popped out of the queue. And this will continue for however many items are in the array. Or in this case, it's a queue. It's the queue data structure, but it uses the concept of an array. That's why I keep saying array. Now, how does this work? Well, there's usually multiple methods a part of this object or data structure. We have pop. That's to, depending on what language you're using, I'm going to use Python comments. That uses a hashtag to notate a comment. So pop essentially takes the first index or item out of the queue. So it's the first item in the array, right? Because queues follow FIFO. First in. What was the first item in? Well, in this case, A was the first item in, so we popped that out. And then we went to B. Then C. It's a line. It's just like you're the first person in line at the grocery store. You're going to be first. The guy behind you is going to be next. The guy behind that guy is going to be third. Same exact concept. So that's pop. So then you have, you can call it append or push. I'm going to call it append. This is essentially going to add to the queue. So adds to the end of the queue. So then we have peek. This is a method that essentially looks at the top or the first item in the queue. So if I peeked the queue here, we would see C, but it would not actually get rid of C. It would just return what C is, right? So if C was a character, it would return what the character is. It wouldn't actually return the item, though. It would just return a reference to character. And then, of course, there is usually a method called isEmpty. And this returns if the queue is empty. And then finally, there is print, or in this case, usually have to make your own method to do that, but we're going to call this print q. This essentially prints out the items in the queue. So if we had our starting queue of A, B, C, it would print out A, B, and C without returning any of the items, right? Pop is what returns the items. So this one takes an item out, pop, append adds an item, peek looks at the first item, is empty, checks to see if the queue is empty, and print queue prints all the items in the queue. So peek is essentially the same thing as print queue, but peek prints one item and print queue prints all the items. So how do you code that? Well, that's really, really simple actually. That is not a script. So we're going to insert a script into here, and we're going to make it two tables. Actually, I'm going to make a meta table. So I'm going to call this queue. So queue is, we're going to make a function, and queue is going to be, we're going to make a constructor method. Now this is going to return a meta table. I have a lot of videos on meta tables, so I suggest you check those out if you don't know what this is. But essentially, we're creating an object. We have to use our index meta method to do that. So then once we create that, we can return set meta table with our queue, followed by our items. We're going to create an index inside of that meta table. And we're going to create a public field called items inside of our meta table, or our object we can access, unique to the specific object. Actually, I'm going to name it line to keep it consistent. So the line of items. So then, of course, we have to program our pop method. This will return the self.line. We'll do table.remove, and this removes a element. And what we're going to do self.line, and we're going to remove the first index. We have to use a colon because it's an object. Then we're also going to say we have to make our isEmpty function q is empty. We're going to say return table. No, we're going to return the length of self.line is greater than 0 or false. So it's going to say, is it greater than 0? And this will say if the line is greater than 0, then we know it's not empty. Otherwise, if it's 0 less than or equal to 0, then it's empty. So we're going to return. So we're going to say is less than or equal to 0. And then we're going to say assert self is empty. And then we're going to say q cannot remove a nil item. So then we're going to make another method. Of course, we have our append. So then we're going to get the length of the queue. So that length is hashtag to get the length of self.line. And then we're going to say table.insert. We're going to insert it into our table here. Self.line followed by the length. And then our value. So we're going to append the value, which in this case, for this example, we're going to use a model, which is going to be a character object or a zombie object. And we'll do value. Then we're going to say q peek, and this will return a print self.line followed by the first index. And we're going to do function q print q. We're going to do for index value. We're going to do a for loop. And the self.line, what we're going to do is print the index in order, ascending, and the value which that index is assigned to. And that is a queue. Now what we can do is make a for loop from n starting at 0 to go to 10. We're going to create a part. Bro, come on now. The parts parent is when we gain network space. The parts position is going to be equivalent to, let me think about this. It's going to be vector 3. We'll do 0, 1, and then we'll do n times 2, or 10 times 5 for spacing on the z-axis. And the part is anchored is true, part that can collide is false, and then we're going to say, we're going to make a Q object equals Q.new. We're going to append our part, and then we're going to say myQ print. Now if you run this program, we have a line of objects. And we are starting at 1, so I need to, wait, hold up. Append line plus 1. That's why. Now we should have Studio just for us. I love this. So essentially, we created a line. I love developing on Roblox. I'm not going to wait for this to load. I'm going to go to the advanced, open from saves, and I'm going to open this file. Now we're going to run it. So now we have our first item, which if we look is the first item, which is of course going to be whatever the first index in the array is. We're going to name them. Part.name is equal to n. For us, cool, wonderful. I hate Roblox. So let's force close Roblox because it can't get its stuff together. Open the auto recovery again because Roblox can't get its engine correct. And we're going to go back to our script, which should have been updated, and it should print out the items. Here we go. So the first item in the array is this one, which is of course going to be here, the first index, and the queue is in order with the spacing of 5 studs each. And that is a queue. And you can also remove them if you want, but that is, actually, I'll show you how you can remove them. So if we wanted to remove them, we can go ahead and do a for loop for n equal to 0 to 10. We're going to do q, myQ, pop, and this will pop the first item off. And what I want to do is destroy that first item. But I want to wait 1 second before I do that. And we have q cannot remove a null item. So line is less than or equal to 0. I'm sorry, what? If the length of the line is less than or equal to 0, then we return true. So it's not empty though. Like at all. Okay, I don't understand how that's the case, but okay, we'll do that. Whatever. And it removes the items in the queue, one by one. In a... Now it goes to 8, 9, and remove the last item. And that's a queue.